This is a car driving simulation soldering practice kit. It's another DIY soldering kit that I received from my brother at the end of last year, and I thought it'd be a fun little project to assemble on the channel today. So let's take a look inside and see what you get. Okay, so quite an interesting little PCB here with an illustration of a car on the front. We have room for an IC and some various other components, including an LCD panel. And you can see we have the little OLED packaged just here, so hopefully this has survived in one piece. As you can see, the kit is powered by USB, and we have a power socket for that. And then we have an array of switches and buttons. So we have these momentary switches here, nice and clicky as usual. Some toggle switches, or a toggle switch. More toggle switches. These have multiple positions, so that's quite interesting. And some slide switches. Here is our IC, and I suspect this will be some kind of microcontroller, and it is provided with a socket, so that's a nice addition there. We have a few resistors, and then we have 3 colours of LED. We have 2 red ones, 4 yellow ones, and 4 what we will assume to be white ones for the headlights and reversing lights on the vehicle. Now, in this version of the kit, it seems that the resistors are not marked with their values, but as it turns out, all of the resistors appear to be the same value. So here we have brown, black, red with a gold tolerance band, and that gives us 1 0 with 2 additional zeros for 1000 ohms. As usual, we can check the value of our resistors with our multimeter, and as I'm expecting a 1000 ohm resistor, I'm going to move it down to this 2000 range setting just here. And here we go, we're getting 986, which is close enough to 1000 for me. So I think it's time to turn on the soldering iron and get started. As usual, we will start with our resistors in the first instance, and those go just here. All of them, as we mentioned, are the same value, so no need to worry. There are different versions of this kit available, some with more resistors to consider. In those cases, you'll want to make sure you have the right resistors in the right places if they are not of the same value. As this is a nice square PCB, I thought I would use my PCB holder so I can do my soldering on the PCB holder this time. And this was actually a gift from my mum instead, so another family member. So what I'm going to do is just move the components to the side here and place the PCB in the holder. Okay, so let's place our resistors in just here. And I'm going to go ahead and pop these all in the same way round, although there's no need to worry about that. I tend to put them with the first value to the left of the text area just here. So that's what I'm going to do here. And because these are pretty poorly printed, I don't know if you can make that out there, I'm going to try and make sure that a full set of bands is face up, just to improve the aesthetic slightly. And as usual, I'm going to hold that in place with some blue tack. As you can see, I just tend to store it in the middle of my solder roll just there. And just going to put this on top to make sure I hold all those resistors down. And then I can flip it over on my PCB holder. And I tend to give the legs a quick tug just to make sure those resistors are nice and flush to the board. The next thing I think I'm going to install are the switches just here. So that's the momentary push button switches. So in this case, the switches just go through just like so. They more or less hold themselves in place because of the claw shape they have on the legs. So with switches, because they have plastic mechanical parts, you want to make sure that you're not holding the soldering iron on them too long whatsoever. Otherwise, you might melt the plastic part of the item. To that end, I usually do one leg on each switch at a time. And that also gives us the opportunity to make sure they're nice and flush with the board. Okay, that looks good. Next up, I think I'm going to do the slide switches. And so these go just here, and I believe just here as well. So for these slide switches, as you can see, they're quite loose. We're going to need to add some blue tack just to hold them in place while we solder them to the appropriate connections. Now these have pretty large terminals, so I think I'm going to crank up my heat just a little bit to 350 here. And then with just the middle lug soldered, we're going to double check to make sure our switches are nice and level. And this one looks pretty good. This one looks a little bit wonky actually. So what I'm going to do is gently warm that while I adjust the angle slightly. And make sure you hold it nice and steady while it's cooling. Then we can double check. And yeah, I'm happy with this one as well now. So let's solder the other terminals. And then we'll want to snip off any excess on those legs. Okay, next I'm going to do the power jack just here. And that's holding itself pretty well, so I'm just going to leave that just there. Now I'm going to do these toggle switches, and you might have noticed me sizing them up while I was placing these switches in place. And that's because I was just making sure that these were around the right way. And as you can see, the legs here are a little bit bent, just a little bit, which are making them a little tough to push through. But as you can see, these are on, off, on toggle switches. Hopefully you can see that on the switch body. So they have a middle position and then two on positions. See if we can wiggle them through the space here. There you go. That first one is in. And again, with these toggle switches, you do want to solder them relatively quickly to make sure you're not damaging the plastic parts inside. Next, I'm going to do my microcontroller and socket. So as we can see here, this is an STC microcontroller. I don't know if that's going to come across. Hopefully you can make out the STC logo. And of course, we're going to install the socket. I'm going to make sure this paper here has been removed. We don't want the masking tape blocking up those sockets there. And what we're going to do is make sure the indentation, the notch, is aligned with the notch on the PCB. And we're going to want to use some blue tack to secure it in place. And I'm actually going to turn the iron back down again now because I don't need it quite so warm for the small pins on the microcontroller socket. Okay, and then I'm going to install the LEDs on the car. So there are three colors of LEDs to install. As I mentioned, we have red, yellow, and white. So we have two red LEDs, and LEDs do go in a particular way around. And we can always double check that with a CR2032 coin cell battery. And as you can see, if I put the long leg on the positive side of the battery, that side here marked with the plus sign, the long leg, we get an illumination. If I put it around the other way, of course, it won't light. So the long leg is positive on these. And in this case, we need to put the red lights at the back of the car, and they need to be in the middle. So on the PCB, this is marked, and they are marked with a direction, and it may be a little hard to see. So let me remove this from here and bring it a bit closer to the camera. And hopefully you can see in the middle, the right-hand side one is pointing to the right, and the left-hand side one is pointing to the left. Not sure the magnifying glass is making much difference there, but hopefully you can see the little arrows on the inside there. So this one on the right is pointing to the right, and this one on the left is pointing to the left. And so that means the long legs on both of our red LEDs are going to go towards the center here. Again, long leg towards the center. And I'm just going to secure them with a little piece of blue tack. Okay, we also have four yellow LEDs, and these go in the corners because these are the indicators on the vehicle. And again, we can double check the polarity. The flat side, the positive side, is of course our positive long lead on here on the LEDs. And again, following the same directions, we want to put these in the corners, and in this case, the arrows point towards the edge of the vehicle. And so those are the rear indicators. And of course, there are front indicators as well, and they go here and here. And again, if we look carefully at the markings, we can see long leg, positive to negative, long leg goes towards the center of the vehicle. Okay, and finally we have the white LEDs for the headlights and the reversing lights on the vehicle. And we have 4 of those here as well. And just the same as the previous ones, as you can see, long leg is on the positive side. And again, just as with before, the long leg goes towards the center of the vehicle. Okay, we have another switch just here. This is this switch just here. And then we also have this buzzer as well, which I don't think I mentioned during the parts listing. And so, as you can see, it's got a tab on it, which indicates the positive side of the buzzer. And we match that up with the positive symbol on the board, which in this case is at the top here. Bring it close to the camera there, and you see there's a tiny little plus sign just here. And that goes with the plus sign on the buzzer here. And you can actually see it's actually also got a slightly longer leg, although that's not actually universal on buzzers I found, but it does happen to be the case for this one. Now the sticker, as it says, is remove the seal after washing. So after you've cleaned all the PCB, all the flux off. I actually tend to leave these on just because they help deaden the sound slightly. Okay, and then we also have the LCD to install, and we actually have that just here in a separate package. So in here we have the LCD, and it actually has pre-soldered header pins, which is quite nice, a little unusual, but quite nice. There is no socket provided for this though, so we do have to solder it directly to the board. I'm not sure I'm very fond of that, but that is of course what we're going to do in this case. So what I'm going to do is, to make sure it holds in place, I'm going to use, of course, my trusty blue tack. Just pop it here in the corners just to hold everything. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now, the last thing we need to do is install our IC. And as we can see, the notch is on the right-hand side, which means our notch on our IC has to go towards the right-hand side as well, which means the chip goes in upside down. And to make sure it fits in the socket, what we're going to do is just roll the chip slightly on the table, just to push the legs a little bit flatter. So just to square them off a little bit. And that'll make it a little easier to get in the socket. And again, the notch to the right-hand side towards the car on this particular edition of the board. And then make sure our legs are going in nice and smoothly. Make sure they're lined up correctly. And then gently push the chip home. Now, as I mentioned, this board is powered by USB, and we do get a USB cable with the device. And I'm going to use my USB power bank for this one. Let's try pressing this switch here to turn it on. Oh, and make sure I turn on my power bank. And we're not getting anything. Oh, there we go. Actually, we've just managed to power it up. So this seems to be the power switch. And that would be the hazard flashing switch. So on the center of my dashboard, on my actual car, I have a button here that it turns on and off the hazard flashers. And that causes all the indicators to flash. Okay, that's good. So we have power switch here and hazard flashing here. So let's try out some of the other options. This one here, pulling this down, turns the headlights on. Pushing it up turns the headlights off. If we put it backwards here, we actually start getting reversing lights on. Okay, so that's good. And if we push it forwards, nothing actually happens. So I'm wondering if this is supposed to emulate the gear stick or on an automatic vehicle forward or backwards. And then we have these switches here. And I think these indicate left and right. Yes. So if we put these towards the right, we get flashing on the right. And if we put it towards the left, we get flashing on the left. So what do these buttons in the middle do? Let's try them out. Let's first push this in forward and see. Oh, that's the horn. So the button on the left is our horn. Might have that with our flashers at the same time. And middle button here is our brake, and that would give us, our last button here would be our accelerator. And as you can see, we're speeding up and slowing down as we let go. So we can modulate our speed. It's kind of nice. If I put it in reverse, of course that speeds us up in reverse. And that's kind of crazy that we can get up to, tens or potentially, I suppose, even hundreds of kilometers per hour in reverse. My real life car certainly can't do that. And if we brake, it doesn't actually seem to more rapidly decelerate the reverse, which is kind of worrying if your brakes don't actually decelerate. But let's put it in forward and see if that helps. So we're speeding up. And if we slam on the brakes here, Not sure that's actually making much difference. Oh, that actually did seem to do something there to kind of bring us to an instant stop. Seems to be a little bit unreliable, maybe, not sure. So headlights on, hazard flashers on, brake lights on, reversing lights on. That's all of our LEDs illuminated at the same time. Okay, so this little driving simulator seems like a lot of fun. As you can see, it says we are in forward, which is nice. Put it in reverse, it tells us it's in reverse. Right, left, nothing there on the stopping. If I put this on, we get both sides at once. And of course, we can turn the whole vehicle off with the power switch here. And of course, lots of modern vehicles do indeed have a start-stop button, which is kind of fun. Okay, so I think this has been a really nice little kit to assemble, a really interesting little simulation of driving. And of course, they also have the horn here as well. Make sure the power bank's on. We can beep away, as well as have the hazard flashing happening and lots of other LED lights, all under our controller there, various toggle switches, slide switches, and press switches as well. I'm going to go ahead and have a lot more fun with this kit, but in the meantime, I hope you found this video interesting, and I hope to speak to you again soon in the next one.